So lesson one for this week, we're going to kind of go at a slower pace than we've previously done. And so this one, we're going to consistently stick with 3 consonants and 2 vowels, but the vowels are pretty much going to be the same ones, just different variations on them. Um, if I get going too fast or too slow or whatever, let me know. But just a quick disclaimer, like I'm totally a novice when it comes to Hebrew. I'm just trying to do my best to get us all started and in the right direction. We will be having guest speakers frequently coming on to help us out in more advanced topics and things like that. Those will be coming at a future date, but with my schedule being so wild lately, I decided to kind of hold off on those before we really get going on. But yeah, so let's dive into this first lesson. So as far as text reminders, if you're not currently getting them and want to, it might be because I tried to add you and somehow remind has been blocked from your side. So anyway, here's 3 different ways to sign up for the text message reminders if you'd like them. So there's that website, or you can text LZ-HB to that number or scan that QR code. And I'll put that up at the end of class as well. And it's on the website too, if you'd like. And then, yeah, if you ever have trouble connecting or need the Zoom link or whatever, the best way in class to get a hold of me is at that email. And during the week, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. I've already shown the website and how to access that and all of the features there. If you ever have any bugs or glitches, let me know. All right, so lesson 1, we're going to start off with the grammar because it's kind of necessary to even understand the semantics of Hebrew. So once you get started in Hebrew and start reaching out to friends or family or other people that have either dipped their toe or are full on Hebrew speakers, you're going to get some backlash. They're going to be like, oh, what pronunciation do you do? What kind of script are you studying? Kind of a thing. Everybody has their opinion and they're very opinionated about it. So this is, and this will be on the quiz as well. So we are going to be studying the Sephardic pronunciation. There's 3 main types of pronunciation styles. Since Biblical Hebrew is a dead language, it actually died. There wasn't any speakers, and they've tried to reconnect from traditions and things what it sounded like. We do have a very complex worldview of how Hebrew is spoken now, but recognizing that it is a dead language and nobody actually knows exactly what it sounded like back in the day when it was fully written. So Sephardic is a very ancient tradition. It goes right along with our writing style, but you may find that people will judge you pretty harshly on learning Sephardic versus Ashkenazic. Ashkenazic is very common in the United States, for example. But anyway, there's a whole article in the homework. If you would like to read it, it goes through in an in-depth discussion on why Sephardic is kind of the best biblical Hebrew to learn for beginners. We are going to be learning the Masoretic block for the most part. We will be doing the ballpoint version as well because everybody has a ballpoint pen. They might not have calligraphy pens handy. And so those are the 2 that we're going to be kind of focusing on a lot in this class. All of my slides will be in the Masoretic block, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But yeah, there's quite a few different ones. I have lots of charts coming that have those laid out, very handy for reference. So we have some major obstacles to overcome, the differences between Hebrew and English. So here's 4 of the main ones right off the gate. So there's no punctuation in the ancient Hebrew, or there's some kind of modern ones that kind of pop in, but when you're reading Hebrew script, we're not going to have any periods or exclamation points or question marks, kind of a thing. And so we can read them in lots of various ways. And it's a little bit ambiguous for some people and might be a little uncomfortable, but just knowing that there's no punctuation that we know of. There's no vowels in the ancient writing styles in like Dead Sea Scrolls or the Isaiah Scroll, Qumran, all those. We don't have any vowels, but there was a group of, lots of different groups of Jewish scribes and rabbis who invented a vowel pointing system based off of oral traditions and things that give us kind of training wheels to start off with learning what the words sound like. And eventually a good Hebrew scholar will take those training wheels off and stop using the vowel pointing system. But we're going to be using it extensively. There's no capital or lowercase, just like there's no punctuation and sentence structure. Everything is just one solid script. And the biggest one that you're probably already familiar with is that it is right to left instead of our westernized left to right. So let's take a look at some examples here. So if there are no vowels, what could this word be? If we are using, like, say, one vowel in front of the N, this could be read as an or on or in. It could be no. If we're adding vowels before and after, it could be ana or uno. We can already start seeing some of the complexities as we are going back and looking at ancient writings, that we kind of need to know some context and things as we're reading so that we can kind of piece together some of the vowels and what those words might be. Again, like this one, if we're adding back in the vowels, this could be the or thy, the. If we're adding a couple beforehand, it could be oath, kind of a thing. Again, this is like a transliteration, right? We're using English letters, but same kind of concept, right? So pop quiz, what is this scripture? Remember, we're reading right to left. There's no vowels. There's no cases or punctuation. So this is, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So you can see that it's a little bit tricky. It's something to get used to, isn't it? So that's where the Masoretes come in. And that's why we're using the Masoretic block script, is because it is kind of the gold standard, I guess you'd say, because it is very beginner friendly. It has a vowel pointing system, helps us kind of flesh out these words. So the Masoretes are a group. This is on the quiz, by the way. So these are after Christ's lifetime, that are coming along and going, hey, let's resurrect this language. Let's start speaking it again, honoring God, and getting back in touch with things. And so they standardize kind of the vowel system, the cantillations, the song quality of the scriptures. Anyway, they're just kind of like standardizing things amongst all of the different groups of Jews that are scattered during the diaspora. So we have a lot to owe to the Masoretes for helping bring this language back. So here we have, why did I put this on? Oh, so if there is no case or punctuation, this is very interesting. Not that we'll cover a lot of this until we're a ways in and have all of our alphabet down. But when we're reading text, punctuation is key. So if we're reading this, where do we put the commas? Where do we put the periods? Let's take this verse and experiment with them, putting them in different places and seeing what kinds of things we can learn from both. So it's not just like one strict interpretation. It's kind of, without punctuation, it kind of leaves it up to various applications. The Lord can mean two different things with one set of scriptures, kind of a thing. So in the beginning, God created the heaven, period, full stop. And the earth was without form, and void and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Versus, what does this change about it? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, ... kind of thing. So you can see how a punctuation is very much a Western kind of English thing. These Semitic languages don't have this, and so many different kind of extrapolations, interpolations can come through experimenting with the punctuation. All right, taking a look and getting our eyes trained to both the vowels and the backwardsness of the words. So if we're just reading in English left to right, but top to bottom here, we see that this is the word banana. So we have a consonant with a vowel below it. And then we go to the next consonant and a vowel below it, the next consonant and its vowel. Here's a word of love and Hebrew. Not every consonant has to have a vowel below it, but the vowels almost always are below the consonant that they follow. They're always below the ones that they follow, but not every consonant has to have a vowel below it. So now let's practice reading it backwards. So this would be the word banana and love and Hebrew, but now let's combine the two. So now we're going and reading the rightmost consonant and the vowel below it and following the word out from right to left. So banana, love, Hebrew. But now here's where the Masoretes come in. They replace the vowel sounds with dots, with these this overall version of Nakud. So this would be banana and love and Hebrew. So you notice that one is a grammar exception. The oo sound appears in the middle of a word versus down at the bottom, but we'll worry about that when it comes to it. So let's learn our first bite-sized bit of the alphabet. The first three, technically two letters of the alphabet are Aleph and Bet. Now, there's some grammar rules behind that dot in the middle, but they're technically the same letter, Bet and Vet, but the dot changes just a little bit of the mouth form. So when you're learning ancient Hebrew, you're not going to be having those dots in there, and so they're technically the same consonant, the same letter. So we are going to be learning it with the training wheels, with the dots right now, learning how the sounds work before we start taking the training wheels away. So what do they look like? Aleph looks like a fancy X. These images come from that little blue book, the kindergarten level book. So it's kind of all arms and legs. There's no head. And because there's no head, it's silent. It's kind of interesting that the very first letter of the Hebrew alphabet doesn't have a sound. It's not spoken. And we'll learn why here in a second. The next letter is called Bet, or it can be pronounced bait. That's another thing you'll find, that even though we're using the Sephardic, there's little differences of pronunciation, different consensuses on how things are pronounced. Bet is what you'll usually hear it called. Sometimes you'll hear it called bait. So Bet looks like a ball in a box, but Vet looks like a vacant void. It doesn't have that ball in there. So Aleph is a silent letter. Bet is pronounced B as in box. Vet is pronounced V as in volley. Okay, and then we're going to learn two vowels this week. Both of them basically have the same exact sound. There's just ever so slight nuance to them. But especially at this beginner level, they're just going to be the same sound for us. And this is the patach and the kamats. They're very similar to each other, and they're both pronounced ah, kind of that short a sound, the ah as in on, or ah as in ball. Now a patach is just the horizontal line. The kamats is the horizontal line with a vertical stem coming out the bottom of it. Sometimes it has that little dot on it, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just kind of depends on how it's stylized. But basically it's a line or it's a T, and it produces that ah sound. The difference is that patach, it's kind of like in music where you have a whole note versus a quarter note. The patach is shorter and it has less lines in it. The kamats is the same sound, but you draw it out longer, and so it has an extra length to it. It has kind of a handle on it. But they're both that ah sound. So let's practice. If a aleph is silent and it has a vowel underneath it, then we're basically just pronouncing the vowel. So to kind of distinguish as we're in a written form here, I mean, there's no perfect way to do this, but a shorter ah sound I put as just a letter A, but the longer ah sound I put with an AH. It kind of has that H wisp or breath of air at the end, kind of drawing it out. So this first one would be silent. The second one would be ah. The third one would be ah. You kind of breathe afterward. Ah, silent, ah, 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 ah. We're going to do the same thing with bet. So we have b, ba, 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 b, ba, 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 ba. And all of these are going to be in the homework as well, where you can go and practice those. Now, vet, we have v, va, 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 v, va, 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 va. And again, if it's a little bit too much to memorize at this point, and you just want to go va for all of them and not distinguish that extra long ah sound, totally fine. So here we have a silent ah. Now here we're going to try to form a more complex word. None of these are real, I don't believe. Yeah, all of these ones are just sounds. These aren't actual words, but I do have two words in our homework assignments. But if there's not a space in between them, like these first ones, then we're kind of meshing together some sounds. So this one we have ah, 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 ah. It's kind of a interesting kind of, it's not a tongue twister because you're not really using your tongue, but it's kind of a hard one to pronounce. Here we have ab, ab, ava, ava, ahaba, ahaba. Well, I guess it's not ha. I'm pronouncing that a little bit weird. So it's just ah, ba, ah, ba. So you're drawing out that longer sound there. I was reading it in the English and that was throwing me off with the H. So maybe that might not be the best, putting that H in there. But ah, ba. All right, I'm practicing these ones. These ones are 3 consonants long. So we've got above, 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 ba-bov, ba-bov, va-ob, va-ob. Let's see. The first one is longer. So we've got va-ob, Bob, va, ba, ba, ba. It's a little bit shorter. So like in this one right here, you might see this in an actual text where it ends with an aleph and no consonant. It's just silent. It's a grammatical placeholder for now. We'll learn some of the grammar and semantics a little bit later on. But so those are practice ones that are going to be in the homework. But let's take a look at how we're going to be structuring the course. Each lesson is going to have these 4 different parts. Now, if we think about how language acquisition occurs when we're little babes, we don't come out of the womb learning how to write. Like we're just not capable at that point. But we do hear things. Our ears develop and take in the world around us. But we're still not able to speak yet. But we get there. After we hear enough, we start trying to repeat and make sense of what we are hearing. But we still don't know how to write yet. We may hear bedtime stories and eventually be able to converse and maybe repeat some of the things in a bedtime story, but we're not able to necessarily read yet. That's a third step that comes in later. And when we are able to start reading, we're taking a visual look at what these sounds are that we've been interpreting for the past few years. And once we're able to read, then we practice and start writing. So everything occurs to us first as an input. Everything's always an input first, and then we try to output it later. Audio almost always happens before visual. And so here's what we call it, like the learning matrix. And so we're going to have 4 different exercises in each of our lessons that will be in this order. I encourage you to try to do them in that order. Try to hear things first, and then try to replicate it and speak it, then try to read it, and then eventually write it. We may be tempted to just go straight to writing, which is fine, but you know, to each their own. As we are adults and we're not babies or toddlers trying to do the normal language acquisition, we may just go straight to writing, which is fine. But I think that if we do these in order, it yields good fruits and helps us immerse in the language a little bit better. So taking a look at the ballpoint and the calligraphy way to write these letters, I also have videos on these at the beginning of the lessons on the website. But when we are writing with a ballpoint pen that doesn't have variation in its thickness, the letters can be a little bit different, but we're going to be doing that a lot in class, and you may or may not have a calligraphy pen next to you or the time to be more precise with the thicknesses. And so ballpoint is a good way to learn that kind of right alongside with it. So as with all of the Hebrew writing, we typically start and come from the left and go to the right and top to bottom. That way we're smudging less ink as we write, but you know, again, write it however you'd like to do it as well. So we start with the main trunk of the aleph and go top left to bottom right, and then you're going to find the midpoint and come down ever so slightly and draw that first arm upwards. You don't want to come right in the middle. As you can see in the final aleph, it would just be an X if both of these things stemmed right from the center point. So you're going to come down a little bit and then do that first arm up, and then you're going to go up from center and make that leg down. And that's an aleph. Now a bet and a vet are very similar. It's just missing the dot. But we start at the top and go left to right, and then go down. And then you're going to pick up the pen and you're going to find the same, you're going to go just straight down from the leftmost point that you just drew and start it at the bottom and run it parallel, but you're going to run it past the stem that you had, that right stem there. The tail can vary. Some people do it really small, some people do it really long. It doesn't really matter too much. But in calligraphy, it's usually a pretty small tail. But when you're writing in ballpoint, sometimes it's easier to kind of make it a little bit longer. And so if it is a bet, you put that dot in the middle there. Now, if it is calligraphy, some of the same principles, but we have to learn how to do kind of the little swoosh with our calligraphy pen. And I've put these in the video so that you can kind of see me doing that. Basically, you're taking your square or blunt nib and you're putting it vertical on the page. And when it's vertical, you draw straight down so that it creates kind of a thin line. And then as you go and angle downward, then it creates the thick part, the trunk of the letter there. And then you kind of do the same thing. Once you get to the end, then you go just a little bit vertical again with your nib, and it kind of creates that little tip or that little swoosh that comes at the end. And you'll get more familiar with it as you go. Sometimes it takes a lot of practice. I think I've went through a whole ream of paper trying to do calligraphy, practicing and stuff, and I'm still not that great at it. But anyway, with the bet and the vet, we start at the top and go left to right, and with that thick blunt nib. And then when you don't lift the pen off the paper, but just go straight down, it's going to be a thin trunk or stem, or I need to get my terminology if that's a stem or a trunk or whatever, but the vertical part of it is going to be very thin. And so the top and bottom parallel lines are the thick parts, and the vertical line is going to be the thinner. All right, so there's going to be an exercise in the homework. If you are doing physical flashcards, this is the idea. Let me kind of explain it to you. Because once you get like a full deck of the flashcards for the whole alphabet in this way, it makes it really easy to start practicing. So if you make 3 of each single letter, so 3 bet flashcards, 3 Kamatz flashcards, and 3 vet flashcards, etc. And you're going to even want to do 3 blank cards. And you can choose if you want to do the English on the back or not, or if you just want to do the front cards. But what I do that's really handy is I take my, I color coordinate. So all of my consonants are blue and all of my vowels are yellow. And so I shuffle these up separately so that I have a pile of consonants and a pile of vowels. And then I will draw 1 consonant and 1 vowel and put it underneath of it. Then I'll draw another consonant and another vowel. So sometimes I'll have a blank vowel sound that goes underneath it. Sometimes it'll have a full vowel sound. And so you can make any combination. Maybe you just want a 1 consonant, 1 vowel word to pronounce. That's great. If you want a 3 consonant and 3 vowel word to pronounce, awesome. If you want a 7 consonant and 7 vowel word, be my guest. But these are really great to kind of randomize it and give you kind of almost endless opportunities to pronounce different kinds of words and practice the sounds a little bit. I do have digital flashcards there in the lessons if you'd like to use those, but I find it very handy for myself to have this deck of alphabet cards that are 3, they're a triplicate, I guess you'd say, where I can just pull them randomly and practice sounding out words. So there is this slide that kind of goes through what I just talked about there. And then as far as writing goes, if you take those and every time that you create a word, you actually write it down on a piece of paper, then you can have all of those words for later and don't necessarily have to go draw your flashcards every single time. But you have kind of a sheet of all of these kind of words and sounds that you could pronounce. And I think it's kind of fun to, once you have these from week to week, the chances are that you'll actually start creating some actual words, and then you might find those out maybe the next week and go, oh, I think I actually pronounced that word in my exercises last week, and you can go back and put the definition on them, like, oh, that means father, or that means cow, or whatever. So let's see. I think that that's basically all of my slides for tonight. Is there any questions? I would like to go through the website once more and just kind of go through, now that we've kind of got that understanding, go through the website and look at the different homework exercises and see if there's any questions there. But any questions before we get to that point that you'd like me to go over again or anything? If not, let me dive into the website. All right, so again, on the Learning Zion website, once you log in, everybody's home screen will be the same, except it'll have your smiling picture up here. You can access the Hebrew class two ways, either here underneath current book clubs, or over here on the left-hand side, there's a link called Hebrew Intro. Both of them will take you to the exact same place. And this is the hub for all of the lessons and all the quizzes and things. So here in lesson 1, you can see that I've marked some as complete, some of them not, and it keeps track of my progress here, that I'm 62% complete. I've got 5 out of the 8 steps done. Another handy feature that let me get into one of the lessons first, is that when you click into a lesson, if you are like sitting up in bed doing the homework, there is a little moon up here at the top where you can like turn on dark mode if that's helpful for you. It's easier on the eyes. If you would like to go into want to see the lesson structure there on the side, there's also that little pinch thing that brings that menu back. So in lesson 1, I have a video on each of the letters. So let's just like watch that one really quick. Bait. But. And I don't have my voiceover as it pulled over, so I've got to redo that video, but it has a voiceover kind of explaining the things as it goes along, how to make the sounds with your tongue and teeth and all that kind of stuff. And then kind of the calligraphy, it kind of shows you how to hold the nib in order to get some of those shapes. Hopefully they'll be really handy videos. They're always going to be less than a minute long, so that you can go back if you just need help on one specific letter, to kind of do that. At the end of this intro part, there is the recommended things. Anytime that you want to look at what I recommend for grammar books or flashcards or whatever, all of those links are there. And up at the top is your navigation to move from one topic to the other. If you want to go back to the whole course or just back to the lesson 1 homepage, there's this little menu here at the top. And again, up next to your name, there's the minimize button, which can bring the entire menu, and you can access that various ways. All of the live sessions will be here, and you can respond. Any of the chat will be down here. All right, so in our learning matrix, we have hear, speak, read, and write. And so in the hear section, you're going to be watching this video. Now, this is an Aleph with Beth thing that we'll do eventually, but you don't need to memorize the video or anything at this point. This one is, the only purpose of it is to immerse in the language and listen for these specific sounds that we learned today. So we're trying to hear b sounds and v sounds and ah sounds. And so if you would like to print out this worksheet, it's just a simple one. You can just do it on any kind of piece of paper if you'd like. But you're just gonna watch this video and keep a tally of every time you hear a b or a v sound, and just trying to pick up on the little that we do know about Hebrew. Again, all the things are optional. There's no stress if you don't get to everything in a week, but speak, once we've heard and started listening to things around us, now we're going to try to replicate it. And so I have me speaking out these.
Beginning Biblical Hebrew, Lesson 1, Speak. For this exercise, I'll be using our consonants and vowels to create a combination of sounds. I'll speak each sound twice and then give you a little bit of time to repeat the sounds that you hear. B, b, v, v.
And then there's going to be some explanation down below it on exactly how to vocalize each one of these kind of sounds. So this IPA chart down here is handy as we get going along and distinguishing between different kind of sounds. The main one that we're learning this week is the difference between a B sound and a V sound. Now, these are common in English, and so we already kind of know how to do them, right? B is bilabial, meaning we take both lips and we, the sound is made using both lips in short plosive pushes of air and a slight vibration at the back of the throat. B, b. Versus a vet, which is labial dental, meaning that the sound is made by making contact with the upper teeth and the lower lip in an extended vibration. So that'll come in really handy, or crucial, I guess you'd say, when we have some of these more Hebrew sounding letters that we don't really have in English. But these ones today are pretty basic. The ah sound, etc. And then comes the reading assignment. So just practice reading these aloud. And there's another activity where I have flashcards. So instead of having them all in one line, then they're kind of in like a flashcard style. And on each flashcard, you can click them and it'll have me repeating the sound. So you can kind of check yourself and make sure that it's right. And then we have 2 actual words that we can learn this week based upon the consonants and vowels that we know so far. There's only 2 and 1 preposition. But we have the word of. So look at this one. This one doesn't have the dagesh dot in the middle of it. So this is the V sound. We have of. And this means a generic father, a male parent, a progenitor, originator, forefather, prototype. It means like all of those things. But keep in mind that this is generic. So if you're talking about somebody else's father, you would use the word of. But on the flip side, if you're talking about your own father, like you have a possessive quality to it, you use the word Abba. And that one has the B sound instead of the V sound, right? We've heard that in scriptures, right? Abba, father. But this is very specific. It's one's own father. You're the only one that gets to use that for your own father. Somebody cannot call your father Abba. You're the only one that gets to call him Abba, kind of a thing. So specific versus generic. Of, Abba. And so anyway, those are those flashcards. Again, at the bottom of each exercise, you can go ahead and mark it as complete, and that will tick it off on the main screen so you can keep track of your progress. The writing section has a small version of the IPA mouth that will show you which areas of the mouth you're working with on any given letter. And it'll eventually have a QR code on there to all of these videos. I'm just in the process of getting those finalized. And all of these will eventually have that QR code on there so that you can watch the video really handily and get practice with the sounds. Underneath each letter is the actual way to write the name of that letter. So those that have been with us for a while, we can read that one, right? Aleph, Aleph. And the gematria, which we'll learn eventually. Again, we're only worried about the ballpoint and the Masoretic block right now, but here are some of the other ones if you'd like to practice them. Anytime that you're reading in a Torah scroll, you're going to have a very stylized version of the Masoretic block. A lot of times they'll have little crowns on the top of the letters themselves. The modern cursive, the pictograph, and the paleo, just kind of how they've evolved throughout time. And we'll separate all of the grammar slides out. So all of the grammar rules that we learned tonight are here. And yeah, those are pretty straightforward. There's not any extra homework with that one. This manner of the Jews. This week, we're just going to be learning about the Sephardic pronunciation and why it's so important that we're learning it. Many times you might have people asking you, why are you learning the Sephardic of all things? But here is a good article with some YouTube videos, etc., on why Sephardic. And then the quiz. So this is the one thing that we're doing different this time than our previous round, is that we're doing an optional quiz. Don't stress out. It's not meant to be stressful in any way, shape, or form, but this helps gauge the speed of the class. So every week, the quiz closes at midnight on Saturday evening, and if the class average is above 80%, then we'll move on to the next lesson the next week. If it's below 80%, then we're going to go back and review and make sure that everybody's understanding all the concepts better and things like that. It's not to be stressful. It's just to kind of help gauge the speed of the class so that we're not leaving anybody in the dust. But yeah.
So for the Thursday class, we only have tomorrow to do the work, so or Saturday morning.
As far as the quiz goes. And so I've made the quizzes fairly simple so that it's not going to be like a big stressor. You can definitely do the quiz ahead of all of the exercises. I'll never put anything in the quiz that we don't actually talk about face to face. There'll never be like specific little hidden gems in the homework that will end up on the quiz, kind of a thing. Let's see. Yeah, mother, she's sending me direct messages asking if she can say stuff. Go ahead.
Well, I didn't know if it would be appropriate or not.
Yeah, so she was asking if everyone is LDS. I actually do not know. There's a few new names on here that I'm not familiar with. That is something that we do want to be cognizant of. There's quite a few people from different faith backgrounds joining us. The majority is predominantly from a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints viewpoint or faith background. But we're going to be having lots of Jewish rabbis coming on, helping us with different things. So just making sure, I mean, we can talk about whatever. I'm not like trying to hold us back at all, but just keeping that in mind with our vocabulary, the way that we describe things, to just kind of keep it open. If there's any questions, being able to answer those. But yeah, go for it.
Well, it's just that for the last few years, we've been learning about a lot about the city of Enoch, or is going to return, and we'll be together in Zion, and stuff. And in that learning, I learned that we'd be speaking the Enoch's, the city of Enoch will be speaking the Adamic language. And so I figured we'll be learning that at some point. But just recently, someone said that we'd be speaking Hebrew in Zion. And so I thought about that, and what about that? And I pondered it, and I remembered it in the temple. This is why I didn't know whether to bring this up if everybody wasn't there, wasn't LDS. But in the temple, there was a part where we did say 3 words that were Adamic from the Adamic language. They've changed it now and put it into English, but I can't say those ones because it's one of the name things. But anyway, so I thought about those 3 words, and they are Hebrew. And what was even more convincing is we said them backwards, left to right, just like Hebrew is. Anyway, I'm just finding that kind of fascinating. It gives it another reason for us to try to learn this Hebrew language. Anyway.
Yeah, so that came up a few weeks back, right, when we were reading this this book here. So this is one that I've have in my recommended. Do I have it in there? If not, I'll go put it in there really quick. I thought I had it in there, but now I'm kind of second guessing myself. But we started diving into this book in our last round. And this is kind of the ancient Hebrew word pictures and numbers, and taking a look at like the ancient pictographs of where the Hebrew language started. This is written by, I'm actually not sure what his faith background is. It's called Rock Island Books. I believe it's like a Rock Island church or something like that. But anyway, in here under Olive, he kind of it says these 2 paragraphs. Let me just read that. So it kind of puts it in context of what my mom was getting at. It says that God has a supernatural purpose for his spiritually significant words. Words that in the original language of the Garden of Eden were revealed as pictures and numbers that, though modified from the original, exist to this day with their original meaning intact. The language of the garden became known as the Hebrew language, the only language that left the Garden of Eden unmolested and unchanged, the only language that was not corrupted over 1700 years later at the Tower of Babel. And then he goes, how do we know this? And then he goes through a few little things there and stuff. But whether or not that's totally true or proven or whatever, because I've seen just as many people disagree with me on that point as with the pronunciation of Sephardic. So everybody has their own opinion, whatever, but very interesting things to think about, consider. This guy also, CJ Lovick, also has a book called the Language of the Garden of Eden that goes through and expands his idea much further, trying to prove that Hebrew was actually the Adamic language spoken in Eden. Well, we'll see. We'll see when we get to Zion, right? But yeah, any other questions or comments or anything before we head on out? I try to keep it to an hour. I usually end up going over. Oh, I was gonna show the size of these flashcards. So small, medium, and large. So you can see that these ones are just kind of like, they fit in your hand. The largest ones are like kind of like an index card, like a 3x5. And then the medium ones are just kind of in the middle. The smallest ones that I've got recommended there do have a little bit of a gloss. These ones are both completely matte. But yeah, anyway, if there's nothing else, then we'll head out.
Thank you. Thank you for this class. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be super fun. I'm super excited to learn it all with you and stuff. But any other questions in the week, let me know, and we'll be rocking and rolling. So yeah. Have a great week,
Thanks,
everybody.
Cameron.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Thank you.